Good evening, beautifully emotionally exhausted people. This is the Nightly News Show. Welcome back. It's our podcast, the only one and only late night show where we laugh, heal, unpack trauma, and occasionally realize our childhood explains way too much. I'm Nancy, and tonight we are going to discuss one of society's favorite games. Pretending generational trauma is just the way your family is. Does that sound crazy to any of y'all? Just wondering, just wondering. Okay, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So let's just get into it. You ever notice families will explain insane behavior just like it's the freaking weather, just real nonchalantly? Oh, that's just your dad. That's just your uncle. That's just your mom. She got OCD. That's just her personality. No, that man threatened a waiter because the breadsticks were freaking cold. That's it. And he threatened the waiter. That is not a personality trait. That is unresolved emotional damage wearing cowboy boots. Okay. And everyone has one person who finally starts asking questions. Okay? Asking questions. If that's you, put a hand up in the chat or a thumbs up. That means you're the cycle breaker, the person who says things like this. Hey, maybe screaming at children isn't healthy. Hey, maybe you should stop that. It seems like it's a little over the top. Maybe you should just stop that. When somebody's bullying someone or yelling at a child or yelling at your sister for something you shouldn't be doing, and suddenly everyone acts like you started the freaking fire. Now, families really do this. Excuse me, where honesty becomes the problem instead of the behavior. You could survive 20 years of manipulation, guilt trips, emotional neglect, passive aggression, silent treatment. I mean, shoot, the list could go on and on, really. And chaos, just plain chaos, okay? You can survive that 20, 30 years, but the moment you say, hey, this hurt me, you become dramatic, right? Interesting. So maybe because the same people calling you dramatic once threw a casserole. Sorry, having technical difficulties. I love it. My Chrome isn't responding. Maybe because maybe because the same people who threw the same calling you dramatic once threw a casserole dish during Thanksgiving because someone bought a Pepsi instead of a Coke or a pecan pie instead of pumpkin pie because darn it, it's Thanksgiving and we need a pumpkin pie, not a dang pecan pie, right? But okay, you're the unstable one then. How does that even make any sense? I think a lot of people just don't realize that generational trauma isn't always obvious. I really do. Sometimes it's not physical abuse. Sometimes it's a lot of emotional survival tactics passed down, like the family recipes are passed down, and you start thinking it's normal. Okay? Like things like, let's see, never talking about it. That's a huge one. Never talking about your feelings Believing rest equals laziness. That's a huge one. Rest does not equal laziness. Thinking love has to be earned. Apologizing for even existing. What kind of abuse is that? Feeling guilty for setting boundaries. That's huge, 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 huge. Mistaking anxiety for productivity. Some of us grew up in environments like this, where homes where peace felt suspicious. If the house got quiet, your nervous system was like, oh, it's on edge. It's on edge. What is going on here? Something's wrong. Oh no, something terrible is that just disguised is going to happen. I just know it. So now you're an adult who panics when life is calm. We don't want to be like that, do we? No, but sometimes you're conditioned in a chaotic environment growing up. So now when you're an adult, you panic when life is calm and you don't want to and you can't explain it and you might not be self-aware, but here I am bringing that self-awareness to you so you're aware. You ever meet somebody um, and hold on, technical issues, I do apologize one more time. Okay, so anyways, but have you ever met someone who just cannot relax? Okay, like they sit down for 5 minutes and suddenly start getting up and cleaning the house or looking and reorganizing the decorations they have in their drawer that they've redecorated 1,000 times, or um, reorganizing even batteries, something like crazy, just random shit. They just cannot sit down. They're very fidgety. That's not ambition, by the way. That's survival mode. Excuse me. That's survival mode with a planner. Just FYI, in case one of y'all wonder. This is called survival mode with an agenda, a planner, because it's the only way they know how to cope. Like they have goals of what they could do, whatever. But healing is weird because nobody prepares you for how uncomfortable peace feels at first. Nobody prepares you for that. When chaos raised you, stability felt fake. A healthy relationship, that's different, right? It feels suspicious. It feels like, ooh, what's going on here? A calm conversation, it just feels boring. It feels like, oh my gosh, how do I trust these situations? And then you might become like scared or standoffish. Trust me, it's all part of learning, and it's normal for being raised in a toxic family, but it is not normal to keep. So that's why we're talking about it, so we can change it. A person respecting your boundaries, it also feels basically like illegal. Um, you're sitting there waiting for manipulation. Like, okay, but what's the catch? What's the catch? I know something bad's gonna happen in like 0.2 seconds. So you always grow up thinking that because that on edge feeling you're growing up with all the time. And sometimes it's a lot, Sometimes there is no catch. or baby girl, you're not going to change, or baby boy, you're not going to change. At some point, healing is the result, the union of a solution, and it becomes a responsibility. Um, I, I know I'm going through it right now. That's why I come right along with y'all learning. So, um, yeah, it's a lot, and healing starts becoming a responsibility when you know about it and you are ready to change. That is when your healing accountability begins. And I think one of the saddest parts of generational trauma is how normal pain becomes. People get so used to dysfunction, they stop recognizing it. You'll hear someone describe their childhood, and halfway through, you're just like, oh my gosh, that was emotional. That was emotional abuse. That was emotional neglect, or emotional warfare would be the overall term for it. Emotional warfare. I know it. I see it. And then they're like, no, 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 no. We were a very close family. Trying to deflect or like hide what was really going on, or they're just not fully self-aware, obviously. Were you close, or were there simply no boundaries? Is my question. Because there is a difference, a huge dang difference. Some families can confuse control with love. Some confuse criticism. I've had this happen before. Some confuse criticism with guidance. Let's see here. Let me think of the other things. Some confuse fear with respect. That's a big one I've heard lately from people. Fear is not respect. And then kids grow up believing love is supposed to hurt, or love is supposed to be earned, or love is supposed to hurt. And it's not. Love is not supposed to be earned. Love is not supposed to hurt. Fear is not respect. All that stuff, And that's why healing matters, you know? It's just a lot of stuff involved with that. Because untreated pain, you're going to start hurting someone accidentally. It spreads, untreated pain spreads, and hurt people can accidentally raise hurt children and hurt people. Not because they're evil. That's another thing we got to remember. Not because they're evil, that all or nothing. Sometimes because nobody ever really taught them or made them self-aware or taught them another way. Or they didn't get that help that they needed. And I know that realization. It helps. It matters. It's something you need. And they need it too. And it shouldn't all be up to you. I get that. But sometimes it just is. And I know realization creates complicated situations, strenuous strains on the relationships. But think about it. Were you really having a relationship with them then? And then I know realization also causes or creates complicated feelings inside yourself too. Whew, it's just a lot. Let's see, what else was I thinking about with this? Give me a sec, y'all. I had a whole list of stuff and I'm trying to think of it in my mental. Okay, so two things can be true at once though. Okay, because two things can be true at once. Let's go ahead and get to that. 1 second in my notes. So two things can be true at once. It's not that all or nothing. It's that gray area. Someone can love you. Doesn't mean they're right the way they loved you, but they can love you and still damage you, but they're loving you in their way. It doesn't mean the way they're loving you is right. It doesn't mean the way that they're loving you, you have to love like that too. But they can love you in their own way, but they can still damage you. Doesn't mean it's right. Someone can try their best and still hurt you. That's one. Both those are huge things, especially the first one that I had to learn a lot because I'm like, my mom's sick. My narcissistic mother is sick, and you know, basically understanding your parents is not the same thing as excusing everything. That's another thing I had to learn too. Like, I used to say, oh, she's just sick. Well, that's kind of excusing it too. But I think what the real thing is holding her accountable for the reality of what it is. You know, that's a big lesson and a big thing pill to swallow, basically, that your mom just was not capable of loving you all the way. She tried the best she could. And the biggest part for me was that she loved me, but then she really didn't know how to show it, because two things can be true at once. But she loved me, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of hard to say. A lot of adults are walking around carrying guilt because they think, uh, they think empathy means accepting all of this stuff. And that's just not true. Accepting mistreatment, and that's not true. Um, so let's see here. Hold on a second, y'all. Tech issues for 1 sec. And so basically, a lot of adults are walking around, carrying guilt because they think empathy means accepting mistreatment, but it does not. You can understand why someone became who they are. It's so sad their behavior is unhealthy for you. That, my friend, is growth. That is growth. Let's talk about boundaries, okay? Anybody want to talk about boundaries today? Yes, 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 yes. So, boundaries. The word that makes toxic people suddenly cringe in their seats and act like they are philosophers, and they suddenly become philosophers, basically. Oh, I know this, so I know that. The second you set a boundary, everyone turns into a motivational speaker. That's how you know it's fake, by the way. Everyone turns into a motivational speaker. You need to learn forgiveness. Um, you're holding grudges. Family is everything. Interesting timing. Very interesting timing. Because nobody mentioned family unity when you were getting disrespected, did they? Funny how boundaries expose people. Emotionally healthy people are able to handle the boundaries. They're able to respect those boundaries, and are able to hear boundaries and go, okay, thank you for telling me that. I appreciate you telling me that. Thank you. I will definitely respect that next time. I'm so sorry I crossed that boundary. You know, just even literally, just lightly. Okay, thank you for telling me that without getting mad. Manipulative people hear that boundaries and go, so you hate me? No, I don't hate you. I just have boundaries that I don't want to cross. That's how you know the difference between if it's a toxic person or not. A boundary is not a punishment at all. It's it's not selfish of you also to have a boundary. It's communication, and communication is good. It's saying this behavior hurts me, and I'm no longer participating in it. And yes, people may get angry when you change, especially if they benefited from the old you. That's real. That's real talk right there. I've had this happen to me a lot, actually. Um, But even though they get angry when you change, it doesn't mean you don't still change. You keep going and you keep fighting and you keep doing what you need to do to keep those boundaries going, because there's always going to be a testing stage at the beginning. I always noticed people are going to try you and keep trying you harder and harder to see if you'll bend and break. Don't bend and break. Just don't. Some people, um, some people, see, some people loved your lack of boundaries. Sounds like they could possibly be using that lack of boundaries as a way to get something from you, and that's why they loved your lack of boundaries. Don't let people take and twist the version of you that you want to be. They loved access to your energy. They loved access maybe to your money. They loved access to your kindness, your time, your emotional labor, your heart, your compassion, your empathy, your constant self sacrifice. And the moment you start protecting your peace, guess what's going to happen next? Suddenly you're different. Correct. Actually, proudly saying yes, correct. That is the whole point. um, that is exactly the point. You are different, and you're different than them, and you're going to be different and better. Healing changes people. It's supposed to. And when there's healing, there's growth. Where there's growth and healing, there's a little bit different changes going on, so that's okay. That's good. You want to see that. Also, I think healing gets romanticized online, like a lot. I'm trying to think of an example. People post little quotes. I know, like, let me think. What are those quotes that they posted? Trying to think. Sorry, brain fart today. People posting little quotes like, oh, what were they? Shoot. Um, oh yeah, healing looks good on you. Healing looks good on you. Yeah, I mean, that's a little phrase, right? But at the same time, what's that supposed to look like? What is healing supposed to look like? I mean, healing is always going to make you glow and shine and happy and be like confident, yes. But they romanticize that stuff online, and it's just like, okay, like, how do I respond to that? Sometimes healing looks like also, though, really just crying in your car because you finally realize your childhood was not normal. Sometimes healing, shoot, it looks like losing relationships. Sometimes it looks like grieving people. Um, Sometimes it looks like grieving people who are still alive. They might have struggling with depression every day. Nobody talks about that enough. The grief. Nobody does. Nobody talks about that enough. The grief you go through with this stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of grief, definitely. Um, the grief of realizing you may never get the apology you owed, that you needed, that you wanted. The grief of accepting. Some people cannot meet my needs emotionally, and that might be family. The grief of becoming, moving on and leaving toxic people behind, you know? Um, sorry, y'all. Um, the grief of becoming emotionally healthier than the people who raised you. That sounds good, right? But it's still leaving people behind that you love, but you're becoming emotionally healthier and you're not going to be on that same level. So somebody's going to go off that level. That feeling is complicated. It's very complicated. Because part of you still has comfort from people who only know how to take from you and how to survive. And survival is not the same thing as emotional connection, by the way. Survival is not the same thing as emotional connection. Let me repeat that. Survival is not the same thing as emotional connection. Some people survive so hard they forgot how to be vulnerable. So now they joke instead of apologizing. They avoid instead of communicating. They criticize instead of comforting, which I've seen that in a lot of narcissistic mothers and stuff. They criticize instead of comforting. They can't nurture, they criticize. And unfortunately, um, if you grow up around that long enough, it starts to feel normal, unfortunately. Until one day your body says, enough. I've had enough. It's just tapped out. No more. No more. I tell you what, I've reached that limit lately, and I'm just like, no more. No more. That exhaustion is what's going to do you in where you're going to make that change. Unfortunately, it's the exhaustion, but fortunately, there's a point, and that is the exhaustion that you can be aware of. And that's usually where healing begins. You know, not with motivation, not with a fiery gut in your spirit saying, I'm going to get away from people, I'm going to change, I'm going to do better, I'm going to do this. It's with exhaustion. And I know it's sad, but that's just how it is. Um, so, it's a lot we learned here today. I just want to let you guys know, thank you for sticking in there with me. But um, I do want to thank you guys for joining me today at the Nightly Nancy News Show. And I hope you guys learned a little bit about something. But I do want to say this. Yeah, I do want to say this. Let me word this right. Healing. Let's just say it this way. Healing is possible. It just is. You have to be along for the ride. You have to be self-aware. You've got to change along the journey, and you've got to be willing to cut people out. But healing is possible, basically. So, anyways, thank you for joining the Nightly Nancy News Show, and I hope you guys have a great evening. It is going to be slow, messy, embarrassing sometimes, but that's okay. That's a part of life and growing and growth. And, I hope you guys learned a lot from this today, because I definitely have, going over my notes before I did this podcast. So I hope you guys did enjoy this. I will see you guys next time. And just remember, it is possible. You can learn about emotional regulation. You can build healthy relationships. You can have a healthy relationship. You can have emotional regulation on your own. Just remember to practice the patterns and to keep it going. I'll see y'all later. Night. See y'all later at the night with the Nightly Nancy News Show.